Remember Anonymous? That group of black-clad, keyboard-wielding masked marauders, famous for their hacks against the Church of Scientology, the KKK, and even ISIS. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard from them in a while. There was a time when they were seldom absent from the news. The mainstream media loved the intrigue of this elusive hacktivist group. However, in the past 3 years, they've been pretty silent. Their annual Million Mask March has faded into insignificance. Their Wikipedia page, once dense with details of their operations, abruptly stops at 2016. So what happened to Anonymous? Well, this is a story of betrayal, infighting, and coming of age, which we'll get to right after this. Maltronics.com is a site I own and run. We sell a range of hobbyist hacker gadgets, from Wi-Fi deauthors to bad USBs, from USB protectors to Wi-Fi keyloggers. The next 20 orders get 10% off everything with code ANON123. We ship worldwide, so come have a look. Check it out in the description, maltronics.com. So before we get to theories of what happened to Anonymous, let's recap what is or what was Anonymous. Well, to call Anonymous a hacktivist group would be somewhat misleading. They're not a group, they never have been. They have no structure, they have no leader. Instead, they're a collective, a group of people loosely coupled around a set of ideas, a set of values. They oppose internet censorship and government control and advocate for privacy and freedom of speech. Keep in mind, anyone can identify as anonymous, so when we ask what happened to them, we're not necessarily asking what happens to any specific hackers, but rather what happened to the collective as a whole. What happened to the values, the ideas that people once used to stand behind? Why are people no longer choosing to identify with anonymous? Well, a Vice interview from 2017 with an apparent anonymous member gives us some clues. According to the anonymous member, they had a pretty powerful team in 2011. All of these core hackers were very skilled, they knew their tools. But after that, Sabu ratted them out. You see, Sabu was a founding member of Lulzsec, an offshoot of Anonymous, a pretty important guy. He went on to say, no one trusted each other anymore within the movement. So this founding member, Sabu, turned to the dark side pretty quickly. After being arrested by the FBI, within 24 hours he agreed to become an informant. He agreed to rat out his fellow Lulzsec members. One by one, almost all of the Lulzsec members were identified, arrested, and many sent to prison. It's easy to see why trust was in such short supply after that. If one of your core, if one of your founding, if one of your leading members can turn and snitch on the rest of you so easily, then how can you have confidence in the loyalty of anyone else? And can I just make an off-topic observation? I didn't realize Anonymous masks now come with notches. It's ironic, Anonymous rails against the status quo, against the establishment, though he's literally wearing a symbol of consumerism on his forehead. Sorry, I just found that kind of amusing. Anyhow, in the beginning, it wasn't obvious that Anonymous would go on to become one of the most notorious hacktivist collectives of all time. Some of the first news articles I could find referencing Anonymous as an entity were back from 2007, though at this time they weren't really involved in hacktivism, but more mass organized trolling. There's many examples of Anonymous as trolling, but one of the most infamous was the Habbo hotel raids, where Anons would log into the game and then dress up with an afro and a suit and proceed to block the entrance to the in-game pool. Why, you ask? To frustrate people, to piss them off, because their reactions were priceless. This became known as the pool's closed meme, and I won't get too much into it because we could just do a whole video on that, though it did actually spill into real life. People started physically, like IRL, dressing up with a suit and an afro and going to the Habbo Hotel offices in Finland, where they would organize themselves into human swastikas. Why? Well, not because they were Nazis, but rather because it was just funny. They did it for the lulz. However, Anonymous's actions did become increasingly political. For example, in 2010, WikiLeaks released a treasure trove of leaked US diplomatic cables. It was international news. As a result, PayPal started to refuse to accept donations on behalf of WikiLeaks. Anonymous wasn't too happy about this, and in retaliation, they launched a slew of DDoS attacks against PayPal. However, it was the 2016 presidential election that threw a spanner in the works. Anonymous quickly declared total war on then presidential nominee Donald Trump. Coined Op Trump, they vowed to dismantle his campaign by hacking his campaign websites and leaking personal details. However, nothing came of this. Vice interviewed representatives of Euronon News, which is supposedly the group's most well-known voice online. They said, "We believe that major anonymous operations simply did not take place because of the divide of the collective on the political spectrums. The US election pitted friend against friend, mother against son. It did the same within Anonymous, as many activists became caught up in the debate instead of remaining true and steady against the establishment." In my research, I joined an Anonymous-linked IRC and asked what happened to Op Trump. Now, someone was quick to inform me that there was actually an Op Hillary as well. And if you scour the web, you'll find many examples of Anonymous-related anti-Hillary Clinton sentiment. So the political divisions within Anonymous are obvious. And while researching for this video, I found many other examples of confusion within Anonymous's message. In this video from the 2018 Million Mask March in London, you can hear people yelling "F the police," but other people are holding signs calling for increased police spending. Additionally, Euronon News, that supposedly prominent Anonymous-related news source, tweeted support for Brexit in the past, but is now retweeting pro-Remain propaganda. So it's all very confusing, and it's easy to see why the movement died out. If people couldn't agree on what Anonymous's ideals were, then was there any hope for the long-term structural integrity of Anonymous? Before I started making this video, I asked you guys what you think happened to Anonymous, and a prevailing opinion was that they just grew up. Now, there is some logic here. A lot of the LulzSec members, when they were arrested, were either in their late teens or early 20s. If we assume similar demographics for Anonymous as a whole, many of these people will now be in their 30s. They'll have jobs, have kids, have families, have mortgages to pay. There's just other things they're worried about. Now, another thing I had in my notes here is that Anonymous did become a bit of a meme. Even when looking for stock footage for this video, the first result was titled "Anonymous hacker in his mum's basement." There's a bunch of other Anonymous related memes floating around the internet, so if you're serious about your hacktivism, why would you choose to use a name which comes with so much baggage? So I'm super interested to hear your guys' opinion. What do you think happened to Anonymous? Where did they go? And do you think they will ever come back? Well, let me know in the comments, and as always, if you like this video, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more hacking videos. Have a good one.